All right, everybody, welcome to the Cash Flow Empire. Every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, where what we like to do is bring professionals, operators, and just all sorts of people who have experience in multifamily and real estate in general. And today, I'm actually super excited because we get to bring one of my really close buddies, somebody that I consider actually my brother. We got the same last name. Quick story about me and this guy right here, Carlos Aguilar. We met in college. We actually joined the same fraternity. We went to the University of North Texas, and so yeah, it's pretty cool because we met. We had this brotherhood, and at the time, we always talk about why you want to join a fraternity, right? Everybody says sisterhood, brotherhood, you know, where you get to have this relationship after college. And at the time when you're rushing a fraternity, it sounds like bullshit. You're just like, man, they're just saying this because they want me to join a fraternity. But as the years go by, guys, I mean, me and Carlos just, we're like family. We stayed connected. Now it's been maybe like 6 or 7 years out of our grad school, our undergrad school. I'm sorry, and he's out here doing amazing things. And I'd like to welcome Carlos Aguilar, man. Welcome, brother. How you doing?
Hey, Sergio. Hope everyone can hear me all right. I've had a little bit of issues with my internet, but I want to thank you guys for having me. Again, my name is Carlos Aguilar. I'm an attorney here out of Dallas, Texas. I do a lot of real estate work, and I've known Sergio for a long time. We were in operations management classes together, and I remember first day of class we sat next to each other, and the professor was like, "Are you guys brothers? What are you guys?" And we're like, "No, man, we're just cousins," and we've been really close ever since. And I'm real glad. I remember telling him at the time, like, you need to get into real estate. Real estate's where it's at. And he's like, "No, I want to do construction. I want to do construction." Well, look now, years down the line, and it's amazing to see just how far people grow. Like you get to know people early on and just see the change and everything. And I'm really proud of him and everything. So thanks for having me.
Man, I appreciate the love, brother. And man, those are some good times. But speaking of your career, man, I think it's not too common where we have a lot of Latinos that are doing real estate law, man. Just give us a background of who you are, man. Where you from? How'd you even get into real estate? Tell us your journey about all this good stuff. How did you leave
Yes.
to be a real estate attorney, man?
Yeah. So I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and if you know anything, El Paso, it's a small town. It's really hot, and I had a professor of mine when I was in high school. He left the school and he kept talking about this law school that he wanted to start up, and he's like, "You need to come out to Dallas. You need to come to Dallas to grow." So I made my way over to the University of North Texas, and I did their real estate finance program. So I graduated with a bachelor's in real estate finance and investment. And then I, got my master's, and eventually after my master's, I went through the motions of law school, which was pretty tedious. And now I practice real estate. And the way I really got into real estate was my family is really big into real estate. My family's always been self-employed people that work very hard. And I remember early on starting, first job was in like high school. And I remember I was like, working at a call center, and I was just tired of it. And I remember my dad was doing real estate, and him and my uncles are, gurus at real estate. And I remember telling him, I was like, "Dad, I want to be where you're at. How do I do that?" He's like, "Son, why don't you come work with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know what, that sounds great." Well, I quit my job in AC during the summer and ended up digging ditches and laying concrete and working with the construction workers. My dad was doing a new home development at the time, and he just tossed me, and I'm like, "Dad, what the heck are you doing? Like, why are you starting me here? Like, I'm your son. Like, come on, put me somewhere in the office." And he's like, "That's not the way it works. Like, I need you to learn." And I'm like, "Okay." So I didn't want to do it alone. So I convinced some of my friends to quit their jobs and come work with me for the summer. And we spent a summer digging ditches, learning how to lay the foundations of homes, do the framing, pretty much everything. And I look at it back now, and I'm like, that's a good experience, because I'm able to look at these homes that are under contract that people are like, hey, I'm trying to, flip this home. Let me look at it. And I can go in there and, now I know what a good job is, what a bad job is, kind of know what I'm looking at. And so that's how I got started. And it's just taken off ever since. I went to school for real estate afterwards. I didn't know if I wanted to do real estate. So I did municipal bond brokerage here in Dallas for an investment bank for about a year and decided, hey, you know what, maybe I do want to go into real estate, but I want to do my own company. So I went and got a master's in business administration. And then I was like, you know what, I had a conversation with this broker and it really opened my eyes. And he said, son, there's not a lot of Latinos that are very successful in real estate. It's really hard to break into. You need to become an attorney. And I thought, and I was like, why are you telling me this? Like, why? Like, we're at a networking event. I'm like, what about? And then I started looking at the statistics, and it's very hard when you see that and realize, well, why is there only less than 2% of Latinos who are attorneys? And, why is there only, 1%, less than 1% of them in real estate? And it's really affecting like a lot of access to justice, as I like to call it. So like, especially here in Texas, there's a lot of immigration that comes in. There's a lot of people that don't speak English. They either speak Spanish, Vietnamese, other languages. So it's real important to give them the representation. And I've always loved real estate. So I just got started in real estate law like that.
Okay, and now you're referring that not many people, not many Latinos, right? And I'm one of those, right? Of course, you can see my R, right? So Carlos, so why do you think that is happening? Why do you think that there are not many successful Latino people in real estate?
It's not that there's not a lot of successful people. There's tons of successful people, but I just think it's the knowledge. People think that there's like, a wall in front of them to get to this knowledge. And it's not like that. Like in the day and age that we're at, you can gain access from anywhere. Like you can do Google searches, you can, call up people, and there's plenty of resources where people are more than happy to help you. But I think as, people that, they're moving here for the first time, or they're not familiar with the area, or, they just think, hey, maybe real estate is hard to get into. Like, they see like, oh, if I'm going to get into real estate, I need to, become a realtor. I need to take, classes in real estate. I need to do this. I need to, take all these steps to get into real estate. And that's not really feasible for a lot of people, but it's not really something that you have to do. You don't have to get a real estate license to flip a home. You just need to kind of go out there and get it done. Whether it's, getting together like you guys do, syndication, whether it's being able to come together in a group of like-minded people and saying like, hey, look, I have this idea, let's do it together. A lot of people that I know that, flip homes, they just don't do it by themselves. They go in, with 2 people, maybe 3 other people, and they're like, okay, we're gonna flip it. I see a lot of couples that, bring their money together and they're like, hey, we're gonna get this home and we're gonna, flip it. So it's, a lot of people think that there's like that gatekeeping of real estate, that they can't access it, when it's not that hard initially, but a lot of people have that stigma that it is.
Hi, Carlos. This is Jimmy. What are the challenges do you see, getting to where you are today, right? All the challenges that you have faced.
So that I face personally, or that I see people facing?
You personally, and then also in general, what kind of mindset do you overcome?
Okay, so, for me, it's really challenges, I think, are my own challenges, like mentally, like how do I keep up with my clientele? Like you guys, let's say you guys are my clients, you guys come to me and you guys have an expectation of, hey, I'm hiring an attorney to do this for me. I need to get this deal done. I needed to get closed, but I have this lien on it. Or, hey, I bought this home, but I bought it owner finance. Now there's like some stuff that wasn't disclosed that should have been disclosed. I need to get it done. And, for me, the challenges really become, how do I manage that expectation? How do I come to an agreement with all parties? How do I work to come to the best solutions? Sometimes the best solutions aren't, what my client wants, but it's reality. And that's really one of the biggest challenges I see that I personally face. And, you know, on the journey here, if that's what you're asking, really the biggest journey is, you know, kind of figuring out my place, like where do I want to practice? What do I want to do? And how do I meet the visions that I have for myself? That's kind of it. And the mindset for that, you know, I have one of my coworkers that really, you know, dumbed it down for me. And he every time I tell him, I'm like, hey, you know, I have this hearing, I'm kind of scared to go to it. Like, you know, I get nervous every time I step into a courtroom. It's perfectly normal. And he tells me, he's like, look, 85% of life is just showing up. If you just show up, you're already 85% of the way there. You just need to get up, go do it. Like, don't even think about it. Just start walking, and eventually you're going to get there. And that's kind of the mindset I've taken on. And, you know, when everyone comes to me with an opportunity, or they come to me with these issues, it's not just like, okay, like, am I going to be scared to touch it? No, it's like, okay, let me just get started. Let me do one thing, let me do another, and then it just eventually snowballs. And I guess the second part to your question is, what are the challenges I see that other people face? In terms of real estate, I think the biggest challenges I see are people's ability to understand contracts. Especially in my line of work, I do contract disputes all the time. And what it comes down to is people become a little bit too trusting, or they just say, you know what, this looks like a standard form, I'm just going to sign it. Or they, you know, believe like, hey, what I'm signing right now at the moment might be good for me, but they don't realize like, hey, later on, there might be issues that arise. And that's really one of the things that I see affect a lot of people, is their trustworthiness to say, hey, I got this contract, I just want to get the deal done. Like, let me just sign it and move forward.
Wow, man. So I think because we obviously, I mean, we're in a game right now, right? A lot of people in this room, and a lot of people that will be watching these videos, after we're done with this podcast, right? They'll go back and listen, and many people, man, a lot of people in this group are in single family at the moment. They're either flipping houses or wholesaling, and there's a lot of realtors in this pool, right? That are trying to transition into multifamily. What are some of the things that maybe you see often, man, that you see a lot from that transition? Or maybe what are some red flags or some pointers that you can possibly give somebody that wants to kind of transition from the single family into the multifamily? Because I know you do both lines of work.
Yeah, so my biggest thing is, you can get a deal, but how do you go about the money? You know, that's the biggest question that you know comes to a lot of people's mind is, hey, I have this deal, you know, whether it be 100,000 or 1,000,000, but they need to get the money. You know, there's not a lot of people that, you know, just have $100,000 laying around. They got to go ask for it. So one of the things that people really need to be careful on is dealing with either hard money lenders, or, you know, becoming in partnerships, and being able to kind of take care of yourself in those aspects goes a long way. And, you know, if you're making the jump from residential to multifamily, there's a little bit of a learning gap there. And that learning gap only grows much larger if you don't take care of yourself and if you don't watch yourself. And a part of doing that is just being smart in what you do. Like, you know, a lot of people they become deal hungry. They're like, hey, I want to get into multifamily. Let me jump on this deal. Let me jump on this deal. And it's not hey, let me take every deal that comes through the door. It's really learning to pick and choose and doing your due diligence. And that's what really, I think if you're going to make the leap, that's really where you have to get started, is knowing what aspects of the due diligence you have to do first and lay that foundation before you just say, you know what, I'm going to sell these houses that I have and then just jump into multifamily.
Man, I think I love that you said that. And guys, this is coming from an attorney, a real estate attorney. You said something freaking that we kind of, a lot of our speakers say, and it's, you know, don't just start jumping in deals left and right. We see a lot of people do that just because they're trying to get their foot in the door, and it's dangerous, you know. It's all about vetting, you know, what the contract, vetting the people you're partnering up with, and and all that. And I love that you said that, man, because I think we can't stress that enough. Can't stress that enough how it just happens so often. So thank you for that, man. Thank you for that a million times, because maybe people people listening to you who's a certified attorney and all that good stuff, they'll listen to us now, or you.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of people, Sergio, and I see it every day. I think that's like the number one issue I deal with is people that come up to me, and I don't know if most of you might be familiar with it, or most of you might not. There's something that's called, executory contract. Like a lot of people say, I'm gonna save the money on going through, a real estate agent to sell my home, or, I'm gonna, I don't want to put the money in escrow. I don't want to do all this with the title company. I just don't want to deal with all that. Let me sell it, owner financing. And a lot of people think like, hey, I'm getting a deal and it's a person to person deal. And I get people all the time that come up to me and they're like, hey, I bought this house. And I'm like, cool, show me the contract. And they're like, well, there's no contract. We shook on it. We talked about it. They sold me the house and now I'm making payments. Can you help me? And it really breaks my heart sometimes to tell them no. I'm like, and I know some of you guys are like in Seattle, New York, wherever you guys may be. So I'm not too specific on, what their laws might be, but, here in Texas, there's such a thing as statute of frauds, and you need to be real careful when you're doing real estate transactions that absolutely everything is in writing. Like if you're doing an oral handshake, hey, let me buy, these 2 acres for, X amount of money, that's not going to fly. No one's going to, unfortunately, a lot of courts aren't going to, they're going to say too bad, so sad. This isn't really going to hold up. So you need to have everything in writing. Even bigger than that is if you do have a contract in writing, if you need to change something, like let's say you're late on a payment, get it in writing. I have so many people that come to me and they're like, hey, I had this contract, but me and the person came to an agreement, and then now they don't want to honor the agreement. I'm like, cool, where's the writing? They're like, well, we didn't have it. In Texas, if you have written contract to real estate, you need to get that addendum, that change in writing. It's just not going to hold up. And a lot of people think, well, I have this evidence, it's going to hold up. I was in court this past week on something similar. You know what the judge told me? She's like, you know what? Too bad. It should have been in writing. And that costs people a lot of money. I mean, I was just at y'all's, meeting on Thursday. I believe it was on Thursday. And you guys were talking about this deal you guys are getting into. And you're like, hey, we have these slots, $50,000 to buy in. I have clients that, on just one simple mistake like that, like not getting something in writing, they'll lose that easily. And that's one deal they could have done, but they lose just because they didn't want to do that due diligence of getting stuff in writing.
That is really interesting. So how many real estate transactions or deals in general do you do, Carlos, since you started?
Since I started real estate, I've done a ton. Since I do law, I do court. I'm in court probably about 3 days a week now. And I've really shifted away from doing, buy and sell side on real estate to doing more legal work. That's really my niche at the moment. And I do some buy sell, mostly sell. I'll do receivership. So let's say, you guys are business partners and one day you guys come to a disagreement, but you guys have these assets, you have to do what's called a partition. You have to divide those assets in a sale. And you come to someone like me and say, you know what, we can't come to an agreement on selling this. We need the court to decide, like we need a third party to come in and just deal with the sale. So I'll do transactions like that. And it's both residential and commercial. So it's not just limited to one. So I do a good number of transactions. It's been so many that, I can't really put a number on it. The days kind of fly by where I'm just like, settling this, settling that. Hey, we're trying to close this. Hey, I need to call this realtor for that. And, some days the days just start to blur.
Yeah. And Carlos, probably, I know that you have many stories, right? So do you have any of those stories that you can share with everybody where where we saw a lot of challenges, but a big reward at the end?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of challenges with big rewards, I can, just off the top of my head, I can think of, times where I've had clients that you know, they've come to me and they're like, hey, I have these serious issues. Like I need to, I bought this home. I did, my part of the bargain, I completed my part of the contract. And they're still paying on it. And, I can think of, recently I've done one where the client was, losing money, he's can't do anything with the home. He's trying to, either sell it, fix it up, but it's tied up in, litigation. And, that's a really big reward when a client can finish their case and, finish like, hey, I finally, when you go to court, you have to file what's called lis pendens if it's on a piece of real estate. And that's kind of like a red flag to the entire world saying, hey, this land right here, there's litigation involving it. You can't do anything on it. A lender shouldn't even think about touching it. And so that ties up a lot of people's like money, a lot of people's energy. They don't know what the outcome's going to be. So there's a lot of risk that goes into that. And there's, it's high stakes. You're not talking about, just pennies. You're talking about, people's houses. You're talking about people's investment property. You're talking about property that people have spent their savings on. And so, being able to give them that, like, hey, we're finishing your case, that's a huge reward. And, I don't want to get like, too specific, but there's times like that where, for my end as an attorney, you see people gamble and, they'll gamble on a deal and they'll take risks. And then, along the way, there's a stumble. So they come to someone like me to try and solve it. And when you can take that gamble and, kind of come out of it doing well, I think that's one of the biggest rewards you can get. I know we all know the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. So yeah.
That's pretty awesome, Carlos. I have another questions on risk since we're talking about this.
Yeah.
What are the potential risk and liabilities that's associated with real estate investing that you have seen, and how can people protect themselves?
Okay. The biggest risk that I see, so my bread and butter is executory contracts. I deal with those all the day. And I've said this should be this should be a huge sign for you guys. What do I need to do when I get under a contract? And the biggest thing is make sure that you've done your due diligence on the disclosures that need to be done. Do your due diligence on how the conditions of the property are. Do your due diligence on who you're dealing with on the other side. You might think, hey, these sellers seem sophisticated. I'm gonna buy from them, and then they disappear from you. You need to really kind of, not only do you need to vet your deal, but you need to be able to create some sort of relationship with the seller, or whether it's their agent or broker, because a lot of the times, from what I see, is a deal goes sour and communication breaks down, and that's really the biggest risk. If you can communicate and you can talk things through and keep calm about things, you're able to tread really, really deep, dark water, and it helps. A lot of the times when my clients come to me, the risks that they've had include things like not able to secure financing on time, or they went in on a hard money lender, and the lender's not only asking for a percentage, but it's an uncapped percentage. They're saying, hey, I want 2% of this deal, 5% of this deal, 10% of this deal, whatever it may be, but there's no cap on it. You need to make sure, one of the smartest things you can do is put a cap on it, like $25,000, or $50,000, whatever it may be. Because at that point, you're not only, you're protecting your profit, you're protecting yourself and saying like, look, yeah, you can get, X amount percentage, but there's all these costs that you as a lender aren't taking on. But me as the flipper, me as the person investing in this property, I'm bringing on all these costs. If I give you, an uncapped percentage on it, it might be, 25%, it might be 100 or it might be 25,000, or it could be 100,000. And that eats up a lot of my clients' profits a lot of the time. And it's kind of interesting because you get to see like, hey, you know, a lot of the times these deals don't pan out like people expect. So you need to be able to protect yourself from that. You need to be able to say, you know what, I'm putting a cap on that. Not only am I putting a cap on that, but I'm going to get, you know, someone like me, an attorney, to review your contract. You know, you want to make sure that these contracts that they're providing you, you know, it even happens with TREC contracts where their provisions are favorable to one side, but not to the other. And people say, oh, you know what, it's a standard contract. It's a contract that I've seen before. Let me just sign it. But every deal is different. Not one deal is the same. I mean, you learn something from every single deal, and your contract shouldn't be any different. You should be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna get smart with these contracts, whether you have, you know, an attorney review them, you know, once or twice during the transaction. You need to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to spend a little extra money to make sure I have that peace of mind. And that's really where a lot of the risks lie, is on these provisions of the contract. Like, what provisions are favorable to them and what provisions are favorable to me, or how do I, you know, negotiate this contract to make all parties happy.
Nice, nice. So you've done a lot of how should I say, you've done a lot of studying, man. You've done a lot of education. Not only because you need to be licensed to do what you do, but you also mentioned earlier that you have to you basically have to get educated when you're getting transition from the single family into the multifamily, correct?
Yeah.
Is there, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, yeah.
Is there a situation where you dealt with, maybe there was a case where you've seen somebody kind of try to transition from that single family into multifamily units, and they just kind of, you know, hit rock bottom, or maybe hit some type of wall?
Oh yeah, I see it all the time. I think you guys touched on this on your talk on Thursday. You know, I forget who it was, but someone was talking about, we don't take these deals, the D-class deals. And there's a lot of people that are getting into, you know, not to knock them, I'll let you guys in on a secret. A lot of my properties are actually in D-class, but it's because I've known the risk. I've done it for long enough that I'm able to take these properties that are in danger, you know, distressed properties, and I'm able to turn them around. I mean, I've bought properties at foreclosure for, you know, as low as $10,000 that are netting me about, you know, $1,000 a month, you know, and, you know, I make my money back in a year like that. And that's a jump that a lot of people do. They think, hey, I'm getting into real estate. You know, there's these properties, and they don't know the neighborhood. They don't know the history. They don't know what exactly they're getting into. They just say, oh, you know what? I don't know anything about real estate, but I have this money, whether they be from another industry where they were making, you know, enough money where they could just, you know, invest. But they say, you know what? I found these, you know, I found these nice looking apartments, you know, they're, you know, built in the 1920s, you know, I think I can, you know, fix them up, slap some paint, and, you know, call it a day. And that never works. When you take a property like that, you not only need to, you know, kind of take it down to the studs, you should probably do as much work as you possibly can on those to get them to turn around. And that's really like where I've seen a lot of, you know, clients, or not even clients, just friends that I have, people that I know, fall flat, is where they don't do their homework on figuring out, hey, you know, this property sounds great, but it might not be. And it's not, you know, it's sometimes it could be even A class. You know, you guys touched on this too. People think, oh, let me get in ahead of the curve. Let me get in, you know, while it's leasing up, and then they become underwater and it's hard to get out. And at some points, a lot of people fail to do an analysis, a simple analysis of what are my losses right now and what are my losses later on. If I cut my losses now, I'll save X amount of money rather than hold on and hope that this will one day become profitable. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I also see is a lot of people don't know when to cut their losses. They say, you know what, I got in on this bad deal. Let me just try and get out as soon as possible. They never, half the time, even 75% of the time, they don't do that. And it's really doing that risk analysis of, hey, you know, I'm losing money right now. Should I keep it going?
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. So my next question is going to be related with partnerships, because probably you see, you know, from your lawyer side, a lot of partnerships just breaking out, right? So do you have any piece of advice from your perspective, right, in terms of like considering when somebody's entering into a joint venture or a partnership in real estate? Any piece of advice?
Yes. Don't use standard forms, please. I promise you, you will save yourself a lot of headaches. People come to me all the time and they're like, hey, Carlos, I want to set up an LLC. Can you set it up for me? And I name my price and they're like, hey, you know, it's, you know, cheaper to do it this way. Like, you know, why is this website telling me they'll set it up for X amount? But the thing they don't realize is when they go to these websites, or when they, you know, go somewhere else to do it, that they're only getting the simple LLC partnership agreement, whatever it may be. They don't get any of like the specialized forms. When you go through, like, for example, I use software at my job, and the software has millions of options to tailor it exactly to how my client's partnership should go. And when you're going to like one of these, you know, quick one-stop shops for LLCs, you're not really getting that full on like, hey, let me take my time to understand what your business goals are, and not only what your business goals are now, but what could they be in the future. And you know what happens is a lot of the times they don't have a good dissolution clause, and that's really what you need in partnerships. Like, you know, this is a hard reality, but you might be cool with someone right now, you guys might be the best business partners right now, but one disagreement can change everything. One disagreement can tailor and alter your entire, you know, portfolio of business. And one of the ways you deal with that is good buyout clauses, good dissolution clauses, and making sure that your, you know, agreement is rock solid in terms of possibilities. And one of the ways you do that is talking to someone, you know, like an attorney who's able to tailor everything specifically to what you guys want. And talking about like LLCs and stuff like that, you know, it's really hard. A lot of times, the ways dissolutions happen, or the way, you know, businesses really go wrong with partnership is, unfortunately, you know, one partner passes away, and, you know, that's a whole different world of how do I protect my business. You know, I, you know, really like doing business with, you know, my partner. What happens now that he passed away and he's half of the LLC? Or, you know, does their family come in, you know, they have heirs? What happens with that? Do I have to go into business with their parents? And, you know, one of the ways you protect yourself is, you know, just, you can have insurance. You know, one of the good vessels to have is life insurance on your business partner. You can go out right now. You know, I partner with, you know, I actually met him through one of these talks a while back in Fort Worth that I went to. One of my good friends, Nathan, he specializes in that, in partnerships. He does life insurance for partnerships. And, you know, when someone passes away, this life insurance steps in and makes sure that they have enough money to buy out the partner's share. Like, hey, you know, their family might not want to deal with the business, just buy them out. And, you know, with partnerships, that's a lot of it, unless you guys have anything else specifically.
That was actually really quick. Camera, give me 1 second. That was actually really good, man. I think because we talk about partnerships, and you know, there's a lot of partnerships that go into this because of you know, we talk about how you can't do this alone. Can't do this alone. You know, you got it, and you really can't. But it's structurizing everything the right way, guys. Not only for right now, because it sounds all cool and it's an ideal right now, and you know, Lord only knows what's going to happen a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. You know, maybe things change. God forbid somebody passes away, and now, like, kind of like Carlos told me before, you know, Sergio passes away. Okay, well, now what? you know, his brothers are going to want to come after and you know, and mooch off of the investments, you know, or who knows, you know. So I think it's something super important that we need to, you know, that we need to just kind of keep in mind. And Carlos, I know we still got a few minutes with you, bro, but do me a huge favor, man. If you can just put your contact info in the chat. I know you got your blink. Are you able to do that in the chat, brother?
Yeah,
John?
let me get the link for you guys real quick. But you know, as I'm thinking of all this, I have you know, actually one of the people that joined here is Guillermo. I see him down here. He's the managing partner at my firm. He's the head honcho there, and he would hate me if I didn't tell you guys this, because it's very, very true. When you have a partnership, one of the most important things you can have is a will. Please, for the love of God, if you do not have a will, go get one. And I mean, we do them at my office. You guys can reach out to me. We can, you know, formulate the wills, whether it's an intricate will, whether you need a trust in it, whether you need anything else specialized, specific gifts. We do all of that. And you really should have a will. If you don't have one right now, you're behind. You really need one to not only protect yourself after you pass, because what happens is, you know, you go through this probate process, and when you go through the probate process, you have creditors that come after you. You have, you know, family members come out the woodworks, and they all want a piece of what you had when you're alive. And part of the way you mitigate that is through wills. And, you know, with the wills, it really, really saves your family or your business partner a lot of money on the down, you know, on the back end. You know, part of the probate process is, you know, getting what's called ad litem attorneys, and, you know, getting disinterested witnesses to come in and testify. If you have a will set up that speaks to all of that, you're leaps and bounds ahead of the majority of people when it comes to protecting not only, you know, you guys talk about generational wealth. This is one of the ways you protect and create that generational wealth.
Okay, let's go to Amr. How are you doing, man? Do you have
What's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. Shout out to Carlos again for getting on here. We were actually sitting at dinner on that Thursday night. He dropped some major bombs there and great information. So shout out. Thank you again, Carlos, for hopping on here. I had a question for you, man. Actually, two-part question. First of all, when you were speaking about the LLCs, I'm assuming you meant partnership LLCs, not individual LLCs that you had to go through that process, right? Like if you're setting up a single LLC just for yourself with no partners on, hypothetically speaking, you would need to go through that same process, right?
Yeah, and you know, with single LLCs, there's you got to be a little bit more careful, especially like one of the things
Okay.
that is, you know, when it comes to protection with partnership LLCs, there's two people need to make a decision on stuff, so you kind of have someone to bounce something idea. When it comes to a single person LLC, you really should be careful. Like one of the biggest things I see is people sign like personal guarantees on stuff. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, this, you know, venture will never fail. I don't mind signing a guarantee. But when you sign a personal guarantee on something that you're investing into with your LLC, you're kind of piercing that protection. You know, you're saying, hey, if my LLC's venture doesn't work and I owe you money, you're able to come after me specifically. So you really need to be careful with stuff like that if you're like a solo LLC. And yeah, what was the second part to your question?
Yeah, so you said you were on the sell side, right? Do you do sell side M&A work as an attorney or no in real estate?
Not too much. Most of my stuff focuses on breach of contract, you know, trust, wills, estates, real property acquisitions. I do some business acquisitions. If you're like talking about stuff like that, I can do it. Or if there's a business to business merger, I have done them in the past. It's not something that I do too often.
So you're more buy side then, is that right?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
sell side for me, sell side is like I spoke about earlier, when, you know, partnerships dissolve and they have all these assets. How do you get rid of those assets? And you would come to someone like me, and I would work through the judicial process to dissolve everything and make sure that you get, you know, highest and best use, the most amount you can, as is usually ordered for these assets. So that way you can, when you have a business, you have creditors, you have, lines of credit that you might need to pay off. So a part of that is paying with the assets. So that's where I come in as on the sell side is, taking care of these, and it even happens in divorces. People get married, they get divorced. And, that's something that all of you guys should think about. You might be in love with the person you're with right now, but easily that can change in a couple of years. And then they come, for half your stuff or whatever their share is. And I get brought in to, dissolve those marital estates and sell the assets of them.
That's why I signed a prenup, my friend.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
Yeah, or actually there's a case, I don't know if you guys heard about it, but there was this famous soccer player who put a lot of his will and assets under his mom, so the wife couldn't come after him. So that's another way to avoid that issue as well, guys. So some golden nuggets. Thanks, Carlos.
Yeah, no problem.
Makes me not want to get married, man. I'm just playing, but that was really good. I know Jonathan, guys, everybody. I know I had some personal DMs here in the chat asking me for Carlos's information. Feel free. Jonathan posted it twice. He posted his Blink, his digital card. Do not hesitate to get a hold of Carlos. We talked a little bit about everything that he does and where he's able to help you out, whether it's single family or commercial real estate, guys. So yeah, and Carlos actually put his phone number himself. So do we have any questions, guys? Raise your hand. I mean, we got the platform up for you guys. It isn't just for us. Before I hand it over to Jimmy, if nobody's going to raise their hand or type in the chat a question.
Now, how do I raise my hand?
Just come on, Jedediah. Go ahead and
There you go.
ask the question.
There you go. I raised two hands in the chat. Hey, man, you guys, thank you so much for doing this again. This is awesome. It's actually, guys, I've spent hundreds of dollars an hour to sit and hear some of the stuff that we're getting to hear tonight. So, Mr. Aguilar, thank you. It's valuable information. It's important information. Not getting too far into things of that nature, but do want to ask a very specific question regarding when those of us that have done due diligence, right? And we've got documents, we've sat down with lawyers, we put together operating agreements or partnerships, not extensive, not complicated, but and a little bit more than the generic type paperwork you mentioned, not the online version, but actually paid for with a legal representation. And then things go sideways. The question that a lot of us, I think, have or have had is, how do you move forward on enforcing what has been agreed to? Because I think so many of us, we just want to move on. We want to get from point A to point B. And sometimes the thought of getting into litigation over $50,000 to $100,000 just seems like a lot of stress and strain and emotion, all the things that come with it, because a lot of times business also involves relationships. What is some wisdom or experience you have? Is it worth it to go enforce what you've agreed to, or is it better sometimes just to walk away from something and move on, in your experience?
Everything's really different. So, Jedediah, I would love to answer your question, but when it comes down to it, it's very specific, person by person, case by case. It really comes down to not only what's the personal value to you, but what's the business value to you. If you go in together on a partnership and, you went all in and, that's your life savings right there, getting into litigation is probably a good solution for you because you're able to recover part of that, or you're able to, litigation doesn't just entail like, oh, I'm going to show up to court one day and argue and fight. Litigation also, entails like the preliminary stuff, like, hey, I'm going to go sit down with an attorney. I'm going to send a demand letter. And then from the demand letter, we can escalate it and then we can mediate it. Or, maybe the contract has an arbitration clause. And a lot of the times it is worth it when everything's a business decision at the end of the day. Everything's a business decision. If the numbers make sense to you, then it's probably worth it. But if it's something that you're able to say like, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna, write it off as the cost of doing business and move on. Maybe you shouldn't. And for a lot of you guys that think like, oh, like there's this inherent cost to litigation, there's this inherent cost to doing everything, I take an approach of, Guillermo and I are really good at what we do. We have a lot of experience in real estate, and we want to ensure that we're doing everything we can for our clients. And, a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of you here, do these seminars. You guys, spend, like you said, you spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars doing, these seminars and learning this knowledge and all this stuff. Well, you can come to attorneys, I like, for example, for a lot of you guys that are wondering, my consultation fee is $350. And then we, kind of take on what your case might entail, give you a plan of action, and then tell you, look, it's going to be this much. And that's really when the numbers start to make sense, is like, okay, the initial consultation fee is $350, but, the only to, do litigation is, it could be, anything from 5,000 to 15,000, maybe a little bit more. But if you're talking about contracts that are, 100,000 plus, 200,000 plus that you're losing out on, I think the value's there of hiring an attorney to do, the preliminary work of, maybe you might get your case done in, $6,000, and then you paid 6,000 to make, the 50,000 that you should have, or that's really a cost of doing business that that occurs. And every case is, different. Your case might just, the numbers might make sense.
So is there a process, like a pretty general process from start to finish that somebody would go through? Like an overview of, like, it starts with, you mentioned a consultation and then kind of building a plan, and then could you kind of just walk us through what the typical real estate disagreement would look
Yeah.
like? And again, being
So-
general, I know you're answering questions like a lawyer. It's awesome. You're like, well,
Yeah.
I can't say it's awesome.
Yeah, well, really what happens is, in the majority of cases,
Yeah.
come in and they're like, hey, I've had this disagreement, I've had, I was supposed to, under this contract, I had, I was entitled to this amount of monies, or I was entitled to, this share of profits, or whatever it may be. And so they come to us and they ask us for a consultation. And, a lot of people will tell me, well, why do you charge $350 for a consultation? It's the same thing I told Sergio this, and I think there was a couple people at the table, and I told them, I was like, people pay me for my time, and I have clients that expect me to do their work. They've hired me on to do their work. I wouldn't feel right giving someone my time for free when I'm charging them for cases that they've already brought me on and expect me to be working on. So I tend to take every single one of my clients very seriously. When you come to me, it starts from day one, and it's really, you come to me with a problem. You come to me with a potential solution that you think about, and I tell you, like, hey, you know what? Because everyone's seen Law and Order. Everyone's, done some sort of due diligence when they come to me to consultations, or there's other people that come to me fresh, and we're able to create a plan of action. And a lot of the times it starts with, hey, there's been this breach of contract. Before we waste, thousands of your dollars, let's see if they can, come to an agreement. Let's see if we can come to some sort of solution. And that really starts with maybe an initial phone call. Sometimes we work with attorneys that we know on a personal matter, like on a personal end that we've worked with before. We'll give them a phone call and we'll say, hey, you have this client, and, I'm taking on this client. There's this disagreement. Do you think we can kind of work something out? So sometimes it gets on, like, other times, send a demand letter. You send a demand letter, you give them, time to respond to it. Sometimes they don't respond. And that's when you really have to start playing hardball and say, you know what, they're not responding to my demand letter. They're not willing to come to the table. So then you do what's, you file what's called an original petition. You file the petition with the courts, you ask for relief. You want to make sure that everything in that petition is filed with specificity to give, the defendant or, other parties, some sort of idea of why you're wanting to sue them. And once that's on file with the courts, you know, you're able to do like mediation. That's really kind of where it lights the fire under a lot of people, is like, hey, I'm getting sued, maybe I should do something about this. So a lot of more people are willing to like come to the table then. And even more so when it comes to doing the whole process. Like we, you know, we have a pretty fun saying at the office that a lot of people want to wait till the last possible moment to settle a case. Like you won't imagine how many cases make it up to the eve of trial and then settle because one party wants to see how long you're willing to go. Like how far are you going to take this? Are you actually going to take it all the way to court? And that's when you need someone in your corner that's really going to be there and say, you know what, yeah, I'm not scared to take this to trial. We're doing it. We're going to go ahead and go out there and fight for you. We're going to, you know, play hardball with them. And, you know, it happens. I had a case, you know, last week, 2 weeks ago, we're going to trial on Tuesday. That Monday it's settled, and you know, it happens, you know. And you know, my client was happy, he got exactly what he wanted and some. And you know, it's really being able to kind of wade through the waters of that process and say, you know what, yeah, it's a long, difficult process, but as long as you're able to, you know, meet the deadlines and do everything, you're going to turn out fine.
Cool.
Well,
Thank you, man.
thanks, Carlos. This is amazing, man. I mean, if you guys have learning something, or this you get excited about what you're hearing, please show some love to Carlos in the chat. Put claps. You can unmute and claps if you want. But Carlos, I have a question for you. I mean, as a passive investor, so we have a lot of individuals in the cause as well. As a passive investors, when it comes to investing in the deals, what will be your suggestion so for some of the due diligence that they should take for themselves before investing?
Passive investing is a little bit different. You know, when you're passive investing, you kind of, some people have that mindset of, oh, I'm gonna just put money in this deal and, you know, let it sit and then they're gonna take my return. I've never really seen where yes, passive investing can make you money, but in the long term, you really should be knowing what's going on with the deal. Just don't, you know, think about parking your money and, you know, taking your hands off of it. That's really kind of where it gets wild. That's really where you're like, where you see a lot of issues is of passive investors. They think, oh yeah, I've done deals with these people before. You know, I trust them. I'm going to toss my money into it again. Or you know what, I'm just going to keep the, you know, put it all on black again and just keep it going. And that's really where people become complicit, especially as a passive investor. There's, you know, a sense of complacency that happens where they're like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to keep my money going and going and going without really doing the due diligence. And unfortunately, a lot of people do get lazy like that. They'll, you know, the first couple of deals, they'll do their homework and they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll invest in that. But then eventually either becoming too trusting, or they say, I've already dealt with them, let me keep it going. My advice to you is always, you know, actively look at your portfolio. Always, you know, if you're not, you know, the head investor on it, or you're not, I think you guys had a word for it. It's like GC, right? General, or GP, general partner. If you're not the general partner on it, ask them questions, you know, just, you know, take the time to, you know, give them a 5-minute phone call and say, hey, where are we at? What's happening? What's the outcome looking like? And, you know, the squeaky wheels do get the grease a lot of the time. And it's the same thing with passive investing. You never want to spend, you know, a couple of days without looking at what your investments like, you know, you always want to stay on top of it. And the second you see red, yeah, GP, key principal, yeah. So you always want to be able to say, I'm taking an active role, even though I'm passive.
Nice. And I think just to wrap up the podcast for the night, Carlos, I know you and Guillermo are based out of Dallas, man. But the beauty about this podcast, man, and a lot of the people that are going to be listening, they're from all over the country, to be honest. I mean, they're people from all over the states, literally, I'm not kidding you, Florida and Oklahoma, Texas, Virginia, just anywhere you can think about, brother. Seattle, obviously. Where do you guys service, man? I know you guys are based out of Dallas, but I mean, are they out of state cases that you guys take on, or?
Yeah, so I do all of Texas. Guillermo does all of Texas as well. I still have reciprocity with my license. So for the next couple of years, if there's, if there's a good case that people have and they're like, hey, if I'm based out of this state, I want to bring you on. Luckily, I'm still within the limits of the state bar to where I can practice in about 45 states as long as I, submit my paperwork to the state bar. So as of right now, I only really do Texas, but that can change in the future if one of you guys has issues with the case and you're like, hey, I know this real estate attorney, I've watched him on a podcast before, maybe let me give him a call. And I mean, it's happened to me where I've had people from like Boston call me. I've had people from Washington State call me and they're like, hey, I got your information through the grapevine and someone tells me you're a real estate lawyer. And I'm like, well, I can talk to you about real estate law in Texas. But besides that, you're going to have to do your due diligence on how it is, or maybe find a lawyer out there. But as of right now, I do Texas, but I'm still I'm still able to do it in another state if if it's really that big of an issue, or you guys really want to go through me, I'm able to do it or refer it out to other attorneys I know. I know quite a bit of attorneys in different states that I can refer stuff out to.
Awesome. And that's what it's about, guys. Just really, it's who, not how, right, Jonathan? So that's actually a book y'all should read. But man, it's been a hell of a podcast. Before we go into the breakout room, a quick 5-minute breakout room, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up online. So we want to thank everybody that joined us tonight. And yeah, Carlos, man, before we close this out, man, what are two pieces of advice that you'll give us, brother?
One of the things that I always love to give advice is just go out and do it and have fun. Growing up, I played sports, and I had one of my uncles who unfortunately, passed away a couple of years, but he was a coach. And that's always the piece of advice that has stuck with me. Like, one day you're going to get scared about a deal. You might have cold feet on something, or, even speaking out, like here at these events, you're going to get opportunities like that. And unless you take them, you're not really going to grow. So always say yes to opportunity. And not only that, but have fun while you do it. Like, just don't, real estate is business. Yeah. At the end of the day, you're in it to make money, but you should also be having fun in what you do. Like, if you don't wake up in the morning and, think about how blessed you are to be able to do real estate, to put food on the table and do all this stuff, like, you really should change that mindset and just have fun and do it. And the other advice is going to be something similar. It's what I said earlier, 85% of life is just showing up, like my coworker Dean says. And that's actually a really good piece of advice. And, just jump in. You're never, ever too late to do something. There's the opportunity cost of doing stuff. People always talk about, like, in stock markets, they're always like, oh, right now is not the time to buy. Right now it's not the time to do it. But then they forget the power of compound interest. They forget the power of, time in the market beats timing the market, stuff like that. So you're never, ever too late to something. You just got to start right now.